And we're live here at the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal. I'm joined by Aaron B. Koontz, the creator of the Scare Package franchise. And part 2 is on Shudder right now.
Today,
yeah. Big premiere day.
Crazy. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you here. So how was the premiere day?
Well, I didn't sleep last night, so this is kind of like my Christmas. I mean, literally, like I stayed up waiting to make sure that it showed up on Shudder properly. Because the first Scare Package, actually, they showed the image and it went to a different movie. And
really?
I was for like 3 hours. And I was panicked. So I'm talking to Sam Zimmerman and we're texting back and forth, and all this. So I had to, my OCD came into effect, so I had to check it out. But yeah, I haven't really slept. And one of the things I love so much is that the people that are really passionate about it are really passionate about it. And that is the best feeling in the world when you see people connecting with the weird, stupid ideas that you have. Yeah. So yeah, it's been great. Today's been a wonderful day.
I'd be curious if there were any reviews from the first movie who watched the movie that it brought them to and thought it was Scare Package.
Yeah, who knows? I will say the best story of that was I made another movie called The Pale Door, and there was a weird DirecTV bug, and it was like the Jets-Bills game or something started playing The Pale Door, and people started tweeting about it and like messaging, and it just went off. It was like a Reddit thread, and they're like, "What the fuck is this movie? Like, oh my God, what is happening? Where are my Jets? Where are my Jets?" And that made me really happy. So,
yeah. Well, you said, people are passionate about Scare Package too. So how early on after making Scare Package did you realize, I think this is something we should do a part 2 for?
Well, we had an idea for it, but we really didn't think it was possible. It's kind of like all the features that I'm making. We have ideas for like prequel, sequels, and ideas because you kind of need to have that. It was taught to me early to kind of have that fostered when you're pitching people and trying to get the money for something. So we had it, but I never thought it was viable until really the Joe Bob night when it landed on the last drive-in and that first week. And when, just so many people came out, we were getting good reviews and people were liking it as a whole. But I was like, oh my God, this is real. Like this is not just this. I kept like giving excuses for it and thinking like this won't last or yeah. But once it comes out, people won't care or whatever. I kept coming up with these excuses and they never landed. And instead, these wonderful people found this, and it took one meeting with Shudder. Like literally, we got on one meeting. It was like 20 minutes. And they're like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I have an idea. It's kind of like this. And they're like, okay, yeah, we're in. That was it. Like, that was it. And I was like, what? This is how easy this can be, I guess their one note was to change the title, though. The original title was TOO, Too Scared, Too Packaged. And they were like, no, even that's too dumb. Like, you can't. I was like, well, that's the point, though. Right. But that's okay. That's okay. But yeah, I'm so delighted with what Shudder did and that they believed in this weird thing.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the new subtitle?
Well, I mean, look, I think the original title of Scare Package was Tropes. That was it. But then I realized some people didn't know what that word meant and they kept saying troops and stuff like that. So, but then I'm like, look, if you're doing something about horror tropes, then the movie itself the title needs to be a horror trope. Mm-hmm. So those like punny, chopping mall, Selenite, Deadly Night type of titles. So we needed to lean into that. And then when it came to the sequel, there was something fun about, again, that's also a very tropey kind of title. This Rad Chad's Revenge is a very, there's a lot of examples that are in that kind of vein. So that was fun. And then also what I love is that for folks who haven't seen it, they don't really know what that means. It's like, what does that mean? Like, what does this mean in the context of this? And I think, we kind of go through a few different iterations of what that could be. So that made it a lot of fun. And then also I have, look, if good folks like yourself keep talking about it and maybe people like it, I can do a third one, but I have this like Rad Chad trilogy idea and the third title ties into that as well. So that was part of it as well.
Oh, interesting. As long as Shudder likes it and they're like, that's a very dumb title, you can't use this third title.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can't imagine not making it without Shudder, but we own, the Scare Package franchise is like all ours. Paper Street Pictures, my company. So, we can do whatever we want with it technically, but they've been really great partners. We want to continue fostering that for sure. Yeah.
You mentioned, Joe Bob. So what was that moment like knowing you're going to be on Joe Bob?
I still don't even understand it. I've gone back and rewatched the beginning of The Last Drive-In because it just is so, the feelings were just so overwhelming to me. Like my phone literally crashed because so many people were texting, calling, whatever, and it just crashed, just went blank because so many things were coming in at once because I couldn't tell anybody that we were going to premiere. And I just, it was surreal because growing up, he was truly my gateway to horror. Like I grew up in a Christian home. I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of this stuff. And Monster Vision was like it, and that came on cable, So, but I remember this, I had this goal all the time of trying to find the unedited versions, of the movies he would show. Because I was like, what did they cut away from? Because he would talk about things and you couldn't see it all the time for the censors. And I was like, oh my God, I need to find those. So that was a big thing for me. So, in my first feature film, Camera Obscura, there's a picture of me on set, and I'm wearing a hat that's a makeshift hat that I made myself, what Joe Bob Briggs hat. And this is, years before any resurgence, any comeback. He just meant something to me. And we put him in the first scare package, not because he was on Shudder again, not because of that, because of my affinity for him and growing up and my true love. And, I'm OG mutant family, in every way. So to have all of that culminate in this movie, which is we make a lot of movies, my company does, but the scare package movies are so special to me because it's the movie that kind of got me to stay in the industry, honestly. Like I was pretty jaded with some stuff. I didn't know if I could do this. I was like, is this really right for me? And Scare Package like reinvigorated my love for filmmaking in every way because we got to do it our way. There's no rules, no one telling us what to do. It's like whatever silly idea I have, we got to run with it. We did the same thing on the second one, even Shudder involved. They're like, Aaron, we trust you, go do your thing, and they gave notes, but it was like, if you want them, that was it kind of thing. It was really, really wonderful. So yeah. So just to do this and put your heart out there on that, we put our own money into the movie, everything. And then to see it on the person that got me interested in horror from the first, like, it just felt like my life was coming full circle. And it was like, oh my God, like, 12-year-old me would be really proud of me right now. And that was a really cool thing. And it still is a cool thing. It's never going to not be cool. I don't ever want to get so cynical. I made a lot of movies. I don't want to get so cynical to where I'm past that. Like the love of filmmaking and being a cinephile through and through, I think has to stay in your DNA. And then once you've lost it, then I think you need to get out, truly.
So I don't know if it's something you want to talk about. You mentioned growing up in a Christian household, and so you didn't really see horror movie stuff. How about your family now? Do they watch your movies? Are they okay that you decided to go and make these movies?
I mean, my brother loves the movies, but no, my mom has not seen any of my movies. I mean, she watched clips because they were on like, a big out like USA Today or something of The Pale Door. And it had a church that was like upside down crosses and stuff. And she cried. Like she literally cried because she was like, what have I done? What happened to my son? And I'm like, Mom, I'm still here. Like filmmaking is the ultimate empathy machine, right? That's a Roger Ebert quote. And I think that it really comes into play when you're talking about horror filmmaking, because in order to do effective horror, you're throwing these horrible things at these individuals and you have to care about their plight. So in order to care about their plight, you have to have empathy for them and you have to understand what that is. And that's why, if you meet horror people and you talk to enough of them, like you have on your show, most of them are the sweetest people you're ever going to meet. And I think it's a way of sometimes it can be cathartic. It's a way of working out stuff, but it's also I think that's what's special about horror. But no, my mom doesn't quite get it. She also doesn't fully understand that I am like have a career as this. I was originally going to be go to medical school and all that. So I think that kind of stays in the back of her mind, but she's supportive in her own way. Like she loves that I'm pursuing my dreams and what's there. She just kind of wishes my dreams she's always pitching me these like weird Christian books. She's like, here's this book I read.
Yeah.
And it's
make
like
a movie of this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the same bullshit. It's like, like little Timmy falls down ice, and then a dog rescues him, but God struck a tree and God brought him back to life or something. And I'm like, Mom, this is just not me, like I'm sure that's great. And I'm glad that Tobey Maguire was in it. I like
Right,
him, but like
right.
it's
Let's
not
say
for
Scare
me.
Package 3 is going to take a really weird turn. It's gonna,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I've thought about doing commentary on like televangelists and stuff like that because I've gone like full circle. So like I'm full on atheist now, and like Christopher Hitchens and like that stuff was like really important to me. So it's a very different world.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I love my mom, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah,
You can't control your family.
yeah. Big Hitchens fan too. It's sad he passed away, and I miss hearing him and what he would think of a lot of things today. Would be
Oh my God, right? Here's some of his hitch slaps of the stuff that's going on today. My girlfriend and I were just watching clips of him. I was introducing her to some of his stuff, his old YouTube clips, and he's the best.
Yeah, I still watch old stuff because it still holds up. And it's
yeah,
cool.
completely.
Yeah. So I was happy to see a lot of people I've had on the show pop up, and friends of mine, Kelly Maroney and Mary Olson, who's always great and everything.
Yeah. Oh, she's so good. I've always been a fan of hers. Like, I just think she's got what's so interesting about Maria also is that she's got this kind of she has a very, very unique features. She has this look. She always gets cast to play the most, creepy creatures, but she's the sweetest person. Like, just the juxtaposition of like her personality to the really scary shit that she plays is so fascinating to me. Bonnie Aarons is the same way. And they're just these people that kind of evoke that. And I first kind of got to know her through Starry Eyes, which I was part of the producing team on, and she played a casting director on that and just killed it.
That's a great movie and a great role for her. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Her and Mark Center, were the two cast people. They're so great in that. It's such a small part, but it's like so pivotal to that story. And yeah, I've always loved Maria. And so when we had this opportunity and I wrote this kind of, this funeral character that I really want, because again, it's horror tropes, right? So what are the stereotypes, and then how do we subvert them? So you take someone who's this like creepy, scary person, quote unquote, that works at the funeral parlor, and look, it's an ensemble. You can't get everyone these like huge arcs, but then as you get to know her and you listen to everything she says in the movie, she's the kindest. She's kind of playing herself. And they're sitting there like Dwight's kind of making fun of her, Graham Skipper's character. And then later he's like, oh my God, I feel kind of bad. Like, you're actually this really, lovable light in this. Right. And she gives this like really cheesy speech as her head's like, exploding.
yeah.
And that was just fun. But that's, she brought that to life in the right way. And I love her for it. Yeah.
When you keep talking about tropes, because I always think about this, because people always talk about when to make a movie for a broad audience. And I think that's not always the best thing, because like with the so first are festivals, then with streaming, you're going to appeal to horror fans. So you're probably not going to, maybe I'm wrong here, but you're probably not going to appeal to a giant broad audience. So appeal to your audience, to the horror fans, and maybe not everyone will understand all the rules, the tropes, and the horror films. Is that kind of your thought process when you're making it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And that's an interesting question, because this has been a very, not like a hot topic, but just something we've thought about a lot, where, this is definitely made by horror fans for horror fans, which normally I roll my eyes when I see that, because I'm like, they're not really horror fans, like, but we really are, I mean, I have like, it's all tattooed, like it's in my DNA, like, it's there. And even because I wasn't allowed to watch them. And when I did, I cherished watching them. They just became this forbidden fruit, if you will, that was just so appealing, and still is, I'm still kind of chasing that high from as a kid. But so we definitely, the big thing for me was in Scare Packaging, Cameron Burns, who we wrote these two films together, the main core of the two films together, and produced everything, was to focus on just what the hell makes us laugh. Like, that's it. Like, it was just, I'm not going to worry, because my first feature, we worked with a studio. We actually worked with NBC Universal and worked with a studio and all this stuff. And there's great things that came of that, but my cut was never released to the public. I never got to have the film that I wanted to make put out there. So here I was just like, you know what? I don't care. Like, we're just going to go all in. And if it makes me laugh, it's in there, and that's it. And I'm like, well, that's an inside joke, but you know what? The person who gets that joke, it's going to be so funny to them though. Like, it's really going to land. So that became a thing. But then I did notice after the first Care Package in, late 2020, there was this there's this discourse kind of on Twitter and whatnot, where some people would be like, oh, that's a reference to this, and they were kind of arguing about it. And then when someone didn't get a reference, they made fun of them for it. And there's deliberately a scene in Scare Package 2 about this. And I was like, whoa, 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 this is the wrong approach. Like, this is your opportunity to evangelize, right? Bring it back to my Christian upbringing, to evangelize the horror in it. Because I grew up, shockingly to none, in a video store. I worked at a video store. I did the horror stuff. I had my horror shelf. When people came in to rent movies and they were like, I want something kind of scary. They were like, go talk to Aaron. There's 16-year-old me telling a family like what to rent for the night, and whatever. And I'm recommending Dream Warriors, or whatever, right? And getting them to do this stuff. And I took a lot of pride in that when they would come back like, oh my God, that one was so good. And I'm like, ooh, well, now that I know you like that one, I have all these other ones that I'm going to recommend for you to do. And that just was so much fun to me and something that I really miss. So, and I have a point to this, what I think we're trying to do now, and hopefully, yes, it's definitely made for horror fans still. And it's even more so kind of Ryan Turmick of Blumhouse called it like inside baseball for horror fans. But my hope is, someone like yourself could be sitting with your friend, partner, whomever. You're the diehard horror fan. They're like the casual horror fan, and you're watching this and they see you're laughing, they're laughing, and they're kind of chuckling like, what's so funny about that scene? And you're like, no. That's a reference to Hellbound. Right. And then they're like, what's Hellbound? Well, now when Scare Package 2 is over, or sometime in the future, you guys are going to hopefully watch Hellbound. And I have just recreated, 16, 17-year-old me walking around with a tape saying, this is what you need to rent. And Scare Package 2 becomes a vehicle for that. So it's this, I'm hoping it can be this weird thing where it's like for the diehard horror fans, but then at the same time can be gateway horror and like introduce you to horror and what's going on. We're working on a thing right now that'll be on the Blu-ray. That is going to be, if you remember VH1's like pop-up video that would do, we're going to do a version of the movie like that. And every time there's a horror reference, it like pops up.
I'm all aboard on this.
Yeah. It tells you what it is. And I think that'll be a fun one to watch with people who are like learning and like, oh, now I get what this movie's really about, what they're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, to go on to like the physical media part, for me, that's what sells to me to buy a physical copy is if there's commentary tracks or something fun like that.
Yeah. We have, I did a commentary track. We have bloopers. We'll have, a couple extra behind the scenes things that are not announced yet. So we take pride in doing, because it's fun. I mean, I don't know how long we're going to get to make physical media out of this stuff. Like people keep talking about it going away. I mean, there was even talk about us not having a Blu-ray this time, and I was like, whoa, no, this has to happen, and thankfully we are. But so we try to pack it and make it worth everyone's while and get something else out of the experience, Yeah.
Because I'm guilty myself. I tell people get physical media, but I'm guilty myself. A lot of times I'll be like, I know I have this movie, but it's actually even easier if it's streaming just to go watch it than put it in the Blu-ray. But if there's cool stuff on there, then it gives you a reason. Oh, I think I'll buy this because I can't listen to the commentary track off a website.
Well, and also with like what's happening right now with like HBO,
right? Could just go away, right?
This shit could just go away, yeah. So it's like you get to have your version of it that's pristine, that's at minimum a Blu-ray 1080 version, possibly 4K. I mean, that's special, and then you're getting it the way it was intended. Because even on Shudder, that's not. We even have to like tweak some of our specs to make it play a little better on Shudder because the compression's so heavy on the site. Like it doesn't have Netflix money to have like 4K, and what's there. So we gotta, we have to think about that as filmmakers and how you're doing that. But the Blu-ray becomes like a much better version to watch,
right?
For sure.
And not everything on Shudder is there forever either. They have to cycle out movies and stuff. So.
Yeah, we will though, because we're a Shudder original, right. So we're like the originals and the exclusives, like they stay there, but everything else is fair game.
Yeah. How does the actual making of the movie come about? And I mean that. So you have like multiple directors and writers. So you all get together so like there is a cohesive story that the stories like they're in the same universe and no one's like writing something that's too similar to someone else's.
Yeah, I mean, so Cameron and I kind of liken this to being showrunners. So it's like, imagine a showrunner with a TV show, and then you have, segment directors that kind of come in, episode directors, right, that come in. It's the same kind of thing, so we're kind of shepherding this overall vision, tone, style, what we're looking for, the tropes to subvert. And then I'm going out, and I in particular am really trying to find the right filmmakers and come up with like the main concepts. It's like, okay, I want Alex Barreto, she was who did Welcome to the 90s, the first segment. She was a good friend of Ashley Sneed, my line producer and producing partner. And, I saw a short that I loved that she had done called Lady Hater, played a Tribeca. And then, she's an actress. She just kind of had like an interesting perspective and a huge horror fan. And I was like, oh, okay, this could be fun. Like, why don't you do some like fun feminist riff on like how Final Girls are changing, and all this. And I talked a little bit about Final Girls, but she kind of took it from there, and hers was pretty easy. Like her first draft, I want to say, of Welcome to the 90s, Cameron and I had like just a handful of notes, like barely anything, and we're like, this is good. And then we've had others. We had other directors that are nameless that pitch stuff, and we tried to develop and it just didn't work. And we're like, sorry, we kind of need to move on, and a few different things that kind of like come and go. And then, but yeah, everyone was handpicked and everyone was given parameters to kind of stay in. And then they're creating, and then we're also producing those segments. So we're kind of now we had one, Jed Shepherds, who was the guy who wrote and produced Host, and also the same on Dashcam. He was UK based, so we couldn't go out there to do that, but we did facilitate, like, okay, let's look at your shot list. Let's look at everything, how you're scheduling, your budget, like, and as much as we could remotely, because COVID travel became tricky again during this. And then the same thing happened with Rachel Wiggins, who she directed We're So Dead, which is the last segment. And that one actually I wrote with Cameron. And so that was, we knew exactly. And that's why that one kind of even more perfectly fits into the bigger narrative. But yeah, we're kind of fostering these as they come along and working with people that, we know and that we're already friends with, and, or admire their work and are like looking for reasons to work with them. So that's kind of the goal. And then and then I'm adjusting based on what I'm seeing them doing in the main story. So the main film then gets tweaked because I'm like, ooh, that's really cool what they did. Let's play off that in another way, and that allows it to kind of come together more organically. So we're not shooting them all at the same time. We'll do like a segment, stop, evaluate, get a little bit of a cut going, and then move on to another segment, and then see how we need to tweak each. It makes it take much longer, but the end result, I feel like, is more cohesive for an anthology, which is really hard to do.
Yeah, because over the last 10 years or so, it's definitely rise in the anthologies, and a lot of them, and I'm not going to say they're good or bad to do this way, but a lot of them are collections of like short films that other people made. They're not really connected at all. They're just people made, maybe didn't even make them for an anthology. It's like a home for these shorts. And
that happens all the time.
Maybe they throw in like a bookend to them. But I personally prefer ones. I have Creepshow up here. It's the first VHS tape my mom bought me.
Classic.
And they're not connected, but they all feel like the same universe.
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, yeah, that had curation, that had real curation. I think that's really important. And look, there are many amazing shorts that exist on some of those anthologies, but I think they're just better as shorts. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we had stuff that we thought were really, really great shorts. And they're like, look, we want to put it on Scare Package Studios. Like, no, like regardless, I refuse to do it. Like, I want this to be built from the ground up. And so it really feels, and we have the same colorist, we have the same sound designer, we have the same composer, the main DP is advising the other DPs on look and feel, so we make sure it's like the same aspect ratio, like all these little things and how it comes together. So those elements help kind of keep some cohesion, which I think is really important, because I didn't want to make an anthology when we first started. When Cameron, to his credit, is who kept pitching it to me. And I was just like, no, there's like, again, Creepshow was coming back, Southbound I thought was really great. VHS 2, I think is fantastic. And like, there were some really good ones coming out. And I was like, we can't compete with that. I don't want to compete with that. Let them do their thing. But we knew so many filmmakers that we wanted to work with and we admired, and also kind of played in some interesting sandboxes, that we were like, man, there's an opportunity here. So one weekend I watched every anthology I could possibly think of. I mean, like literally everyone. I created a spreadsheet, pluses and minuses, and like what worked and what segments I liked and every little thing. And there's a few takeaways that I had. One, I loved the comedies. But I also felt they were weird when a comedy was next to like a super serious thing, and it became kind of tonally difficult. Again, the cohesion, which we talked about, I that was something that was important. And then I really wanted the wraparound story to be the driver rather than the passenger, because I think a lot of times you're watching these segments and you're just like, okay, like when you get back to the wraparound, you're like, yeah, just give me back to the segment. And then you don't care. And it just becomes this complete afterthought. And I wanted to completely invert that. So that way, hopefully you have a core story that you're interested in the whole time. And regardless of what you're feeling about the segments, you have something that you're coming back to that you're enjoying. Or if you're not enjoying that, you still can go to all the segments, and vice versa. But it gave something that, it was important to me that if you removed all the segments, you still had one story. And that was something I just hadn't seen a lot. I'd seen people dabble in it a little here and there, but this became a hook. And then when I said every segment was a different set of horror tropes that we were subverting, that really became a fun hook. And I was like, this is different. I haven't seen it before. And that's when things excite me, is when they're not out there already.
Yeah. Because usually in the anthologies, the bookends are much shorter, even if they go back to them a little bit. But this is in Scare Package 2, it definitely is an ongoing story throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, it's a movie. In fact, we didn't even call it a segment. Right. Like my stuff is just called Scare Package 2. Yeah. And then there's segments within that. Yeah.
So we've over the last 10 years or so, has been so much 80s nostalgia, and now there's starting to be some 90s nostalgia. And I think everyone can kind of get like what 80s like vibe is. How do you capture the feel of the 90s?
Well, I think what was happening in horror was really kind of interesting, because the 80s was very derivative, and I don't mean that to be negative, but there is a reality here that there were a lot of movies that became huge hits, were financially viable, and the direct-to-video model was so profitable in horror, especially in the 80s. And then that started to kind of evolve a little bit going to the 90s. There was still a good, tape market, but getting into DVDs and all that, it started to change. And so as that happened, all these sequels sort of kind of died down, and it was like, okay, now it's reboots. And it was like, okay, where can we get horror? And it was like J horror, and the torture porn era. So they were trying to, and I do think they learned a lot from, you get into some of the French horror that was happening and what was there too, and that some of that's still a little later 2000s, but there's still some stuff that kind of was going in, and that they were that was experimental, that, especially in North America, we were learning a lot about how this all evolved. So when it gets into 90s horror, there's a lot of stuff that I have a lot of fun with. There's like shoddy CGI mixed with like super, super amazing practical effects.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is happening? Like Ghost Ship is a great example of this, where like there'll be the coolest moment, and then there's just like this weirdest CGI thing. And that was fun. So we deliberately actually did that in a couple spots. We had like a couple like really cringy kind of CGI moments within a practical effect. I don't know if that was a wise decision, because I don't think everybody's getting it, but that's part of what you're trying to do and lean into. So it was like kind of finding that aesthetic, and then also understanding that some of those tropes were changing, right? So the final girl trope definitely started to change, about, if you have sex, you die, that kind of thing.
I think that's when the term really came about, because before that would be like Scream Queen.
Yeah, completely. And Scream, really kind of helped shepherd in a new version of that. And that's, again, credit to Alex Beretta, who did Welcome to the 90s. That's what it's about. It's like, look, welcome to the 90s. Like, this is a different thing. It's a different era. And this idea that, because, there were a lot of men, I'm not going to get into like feminism here or whatever, but there was a lot of men talking about like, oh yeah, these are feminist movies because there's a final girl that's sitting there and is last. And it's like, well, let's be a little careful here. That's not exactly what's happening. And thankfully, Deborah Hill had a really big influence on what Laurie Strode became, with Carpenter's Halloween. And if you really start to kind of like study the ethos of this and like understand like where the final girl tropes came from, it was a little more problematic than I think people were willing to kind of admit. And then so how do you, but again, it still worked, but it's not, we weren't as progressive as everybody thought they were at that time. So you see how that starts to evolve. And I think there's really fun things to kind of play with. And look, so to get to take something that is a topic that I think is important and then have this super, super silly, stupid way of doing it, that's fun for me. I mean, we talk about that. We talk about, a toxic fandom, horror gatekeeping, all of these things that are like topics that I think, the horror community needs to address. We need to be better about. And I get to do it in the dumbest ways possible. And that makes that makes me really happy.
Yeah. Well, when you do something like that, so is in your mind, we got to keep it balanced so people can just enjoy it as a silly, fun movie. And, we're also saying something, but if you go too much one way, maybe you're preaching to people. So it's like that in your mind when you're making the movie. We're still making a movie.
100%. The movie, it's story structure, gags, the jokes, the fun first, right? And it's like, okay, and then you massage it to make sure that it plays well in what you're trying to say. You can't force things in there. As far as what's happening. That's
more effective too, because otherwise you just be talking to people who already think that anyway, and you're not going to change anyone's mind. But if they're watching and having fun, and maybe it makes them think about something different.
Yeah, and you also can watch it and not think about it at all. And just be like, this is really funny, and that's great too. Yeah. Like it's not meant to alienate anyone in that way. I think, but if as directors and filmmakers, I think you have to think about what it is you're trying to say and like have kind of like a pathos to this, if you will. And then from there, like the audience gets to interpret it and run with it and take it where they will, I mean, I read one review today or yesterday that was like, this really seems like I'm saying you need to be in the horror cool club or get the hell out. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because I can see how they interpreted it that way, but that's not the goal at all. It's actually the opposite. But I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's their interpretation. That's totally fine. And because they watched it, took it in, and it gets, because once you make the movie and you put it out there, like this movie is now yours. It's no longer my movie, it's your movie. And so you guys get to take that in, and it gets become something hopefully special. Hopefully it can be a reprieve when things are down. I was just talking to someone that's the holidays are really, really tough for them, and their mother's like super sick and they're just like super depressed, and they're like, I'm just watching Scare Package and Scare Package 2 on repeat, and like, thank you. And it just, I'm like, holy shit, like that just means so much, that like this can be that reprieve for them. And I'm like, this is yours. That's yours. It gets to be that for you, and that's really, really special because, I mean, as a kid, I had some family drama growing up, and that still do because everybody does. But I mean, the way I escaped was watching, these movies, and if I didn't want to hear my parents fighting, I didn't want to hear things that were going on or deal with some of the shit that was going on in my life, I could pop in, anything, and Halloween 4, and just like have fun and just get away from this shit, and I think it worked well for us too, because we released this in 2020 in like peak pandemic, the first one, and people were stuck in their homes, not knowing what to do. And it's just like, and there was, like, can I just like laugh at something, so this, I think this helped there too. Hopefully it did. Yeah.
So when Scare Package, the first one came out, the festival scene would have been different then, because I assume a lot of them were virtual. So did you get to see it with too many audiences at that time?
So we had a 2019 festival premiere. So we had a few, but we had a ton of festivals canceled though. So, and then my movie, The Pale Door, I've still never seen that in a theater with a crowd ever. Yeah. So, so that was tricky, but yeah, we premiered at Citrus in Spain, in 2019, October 2019. And it was wonderful. It was actually where I met Rachel Wiggins, who directed We're
Oh,
So
wow.
Dead. She had a project that she had produced that was there, and it played right before Scare Package. And we're all we all know each other. It's a very, very small community, and so I was like, oh shit, what are you doing? And we hung out, and she was with our group. And then that night we were driving her back to her hotel, and Jeremy King, Rad Chad, was driving and left his international license back like where we
Oh,
were,
wow. Yeah.
and then drove on a one-way street the wrong way by accident.
Uh-huh.
And he was sober, and then they
Right,
pulled
right.
us over, and they're making us take breathalyzers, and
Yeah.
there's like 5 cop cars around us. They're putting flashlights in there. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I'm really sorry, Rachel. I didn't mean to get you arrested, but we did. We were okay, obviously. And but that was like a fun story, and kind of bonded over that. And then she's doing the new Wolf Creek movie, the Wolf Creek sequel.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, really, really cool. And I was like, shit, like that's really great. And we were just chatting, and then she's like, yeah, but it got pushed. I don't know, it's going to take a while, so it's not going to happen, for a bit. And and I think it still hasn't happened, unfortunately. It's just how these movies go sometimes. But I was like, oh wait, you have an opening. And then I had lost another director that was directing We're So Dead, and so it worked out perfectly, and we were able to bring her in. She got to do like an Aussie spin on it, which was a lot of fun. Yeah.
So how about for Scare Package 2, the festival scene? Was that much different?
Yeah, no, this was good. In fact, a number of the festivals that I wanted to play, Scare Package 1, and they were canceled, I was able to kind of be there in person for these. So we world premiered at London at Fright Fest, which was just epic. I mean, that's on this IMAX screen. It's the largest screen in the UK, which is really, really cool. And like Neil Marshall's there, and like, all this, just a lot of fun stuff's going on. So that was really great. And then after that, Brussels International, BIFF, which is one of the oldest international film festivals in Belgium, they actually launched Guillermo del Toro's career, like his first couple movies that played there. And there's like pictures of him with awards and stuff there and everything, which is really cool. And so 40 plus years, and then they've been around, and then they were supposed to play the first Scare Package, but that was canceled because of the pandemic. So they're like, hey, we never got to play with the crowd. Why don't we open the festival with Scare Package 1, and then why don't we close the festival with Scare Package 2? And I was like, oh my God, what an honor. So my girlfriend and I, it was our 1-year anniversary, and it's like, let's just like hang out in Belgium for a week, which was amazing, So we were already in London, so we took the train to Belgium and did that. That was so cool to see in front of their crowd. And then, God, yeah, I played in Canada. We played in Helsinki. Played at Popcorn Frights in Miami, Nightmares Fest in Ohio, all over, and so Telluride Horror was a really, really fun one. So it's been, we've probably had a dozen or so pretty good festivals leading up to this. And honestly, there was part of me that kind of wanted the movie to wait even longer to keep playing festivals, because I love it.
Yeah.
But we had already kind of, the movie needed to come out. So it was time. Yeah.
I don't want to talk about myself, but I was at Frightmare in London this year.
Oh, you were? Did you see Scare Package 2 there?
I came in after it showed, because my first feature premiered at Fright Fest, which I was very excited about.
Amazing. Which was your feature?
The Once and Future Smash and End Zone 2, they played together.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Epstein and that, like,
right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
They came in before I did, but
him and Sophia.
Yeah,
they're so sweet. That's so great. Oh, small world again. Look, perfect example. Right. The horror community is a small world. Like, we all know each other. Yeah, completely.
Yeah. I stayed out with them when we made the movie in LA.
Oh, fun. Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, that movie's a lot of fun. Well, the 2 movies are a lot of fun. Yeah, very, very cool.
Yeah, we played a few festivals together, Nightmares and Fright Fest and stuff. So.
Yeah, I was able to get it from Jason. That's how I was able to see it. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I was at in Ohio. That was a really cool festival. What are the benefits, in your opinion, of festivals?
I mean, it depends on the festival. I mean, I think number one, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for filmmakers to meet other filmmakers. And I'm a big believer in kind of networking laterally, and just like your counterparts. I think everybody gets so caught up in like, I got to meet this person and do this thing. And I think sometimes the best partners you're going to have are the ones that are playing festivals with you right now. you know.
Mhm.
And so, you know, the people that I went to film school with are like Adam Wingard, Godzilla versus Kong, and Evan Katz, and you know, Travis Stevens. Like Travis was sleeping on Evan's couch, and you know, this kind of stuff. And
his movie played there too, Wounded Fawn.
yeah, exactly, right. And Travis is, you know, that's where we met. We started working together through Starry Eyes, and you know, and all these. I mean, you know, I met Ty West through Adam, and like all these people, and no one was like blowing up at that time. No one was doing anything, you know, but we were all kind of in this together, you know, and what was going on. And then I actually left the industry for a while, and then kind of came back in when I saw what my friends were doing. And it was like so inspiring to kind of see that. But I think going to festivals allows you to kind of meet so many people you would never meet, and also know that you're not alone. Like, especially as a writer director, it can be very, very isolating. And so to have that, and because most of the time, especially in the way films are distributed now, you're not going to see your movie on a big screen. It's just not going to happen unless you like four wall it, rent a theater yourself.
Right.
So to have that experience, I think is so valuable. But I will say, I think the days of like, I'm going to go to a festival, I'm going to win a prize, I'm going to be discovered, aren't really there anymore.
Right.
The movies
like
that are
you're going to make the next Clerks or something, right?
Yeah, like, so the next Clerks is already going to be financed by somebody, probably, you know. I mean, look, there are, but I've been waiting for like the next Puppy Chair and these types of things. There's not a ton of examples of those anymore. So, you know, but I'm not saying that it can't happen. It definitely can.
Mm-hmm.
And there's wonderful filmmakers that have been discovered through this, and what can kind of happen there. But there's just I think the industry is much more acutely aware of who's kind of doing what, even like making short films and stuff, you know. I mean, Parker Finn makes Smile, and that was all because of a short film that played at South by Southwest,
mm-hmm.
you know, and what was there, you know, and that was never supposed to be the movie it was, right? You know, that was a smaller release.
When I see people saying there's no good horror movies, I'm like, there's great movies this year, independent ones, and a lot of theatrical release movies were great, like Smile.
I mean, I don't know. People, if you know people that are saying there aren't great horror movies, to me, they're not watching enough horror movies, because
right.
This year in particular is fantastic. This is the best year in horror in recent memory. Like, truly. Like, I mean, it is top to bottom. You know, I don't know that there's like the one horror film that, like, you know, seals it for this year, but the top 10 horror films of the year, and I'm not here to make lists or whatever, but like, that I think are just like, oh my God, there's just so many phenomenal horror films, whether it's studio, whether it's things like A Wounded Fawn that you mentioned, you know, Smile, Nope, you know, like these movies that they're everywhere, you know, and this year has been just, I mean, we made, you know, our movie came out today, and I've had a couple of people say like, oh, like, you're going to make our list. And I'm like, how? Like, are you sure? Did you watch all the movies and then watch our movie? Because like this year's too good. You know, this year's too good.
I keep just so I can remember at the end of the year what I've seen, and I always keep a list of stuff I really like. And I'm having a hard time there. We do the top 13 at the end of the year, and I'm like, this is a hard year to narrow it down to 13 because there's like so many.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So no, I think, look, I think sometimes people, they do the same thing in like music, you know. I think there's this idea that you're like nostalgic for a thing that you had. But right now, I think there is, you know, look, TV, music, and movies, there are so many other versions of it that there is more crap out there. So like, let's just be honest, right? Just the sheer numbers, because more people have access to be filmmakers.
All the streaming sites, they need content. So
so that's there, but that also means that there's more opportunities, there's more sandboxes to play in unique ways and do different stuff. I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once is my favorite films of the year.
Awesome.
And I consider it a genre film through and through. And like, that movie never would have been greenlit by a studio previously. And people talk about like, oh, studios don't do what they used to do. I mean, it's true. They do want derivative stuff. That is true. They do want IP, and there's huge problems there. But let's celebrate when shit like this happens, because that's completely original.
I think a lot of TVs say, even like big, like Breaking Bad, like when I was a kid, when they made a TV show about like a teacher who starts selling, you know, drugs, like, no, that would never be a thing, you know. Yeah, there's because of the content so much. They need the content. I think they give the okay to a lot of things that, like you said, would not be made, previously.
Oh, we're in the glory days of TV, like
Yeah,
flat out. I
100%.
mean, but also there's the worst TV ever made
Sure.
going on right now,
Yeah,
right? There's a new Kardashian, whatever. Like there's
right.
just there's some things that are unfortunate within that. But I think it really kind of came out of Sopranos and The Wire.
I mention this all the time, but yeah.
The limited series kind of
Yeah.
style of things. And right now, I mean, it is, like I can't, like The Last of Us, I'm so excited for. I think Craig Mazin's one of the most talented writers, and he talks about this. Like he never wanted to work in TV. It was like, no, it's movies. And then now he's like, I'll never work in movies again.
Yeah, it used to be like you would never see like a big star, A-list movie star, or even a movie star like in a TV show, because it would be like, oh, man, he must be falling on bad times. But now, like, you see big people because they get better scripts, for a lot of TV shows.
It's better content. It's better. I mean, the only thing that still hinders the big stars doing TV right now is the time commitment. Like that's it. So like if the show is not that, it's not going to be killer. Right. And then they don't want to risk like, well, now I have like, oh, they're gonna do 3 seasons and I'm stuck for 4 years.
Yeah.
So that and I say that because like we have a show, a TV series that we're trying to get off the ground, and looks actually, without announcing anything, looks very promising right now. And it's a horror series that I would be show running with another good pal of mine. But with that, it's fun because we're building worlds. Like I'm so used to in movies, like the propulsiveness of it. And it's like, you got to cut this scene and cut this scene to kind of get you there. Whereas in TV, it's like, you need to add that scene in. And that's, you need to, this is all character, and another friend of mine recently just said, we were talking about White Lotus 2, and everything about the second season of White Lotus 2, the second season of White Lotus, it's all character driven, action. Like there's no plot driving it, it's character driving it, and that moves your plot forward. And that's really, really special until like the very end, the last episode. So I think it's just a totally different medium now, and I think we're living in a really, really special time when it comes to that. You just have to kind of get away the other shit that's there.
Like the first season of True Detective, I think, is one of the best seasons of any show ever made.
100%.
But like you were saying, like that, if that would have been every season the same characters, like they probably couldn't have got the cast that they got for the first season.
Limited series helps. Yeah, limited series helps a lot. And yes, I think True Detective season 1 is one of my favorite seasons of television ever. I mean, I almost got Not Penny's Boat tattooed on my hand. I love Lost that much too, so it's definitely a medium that I'm excited about, and that's why, again, so many filmmakers are, especially feature filmmakers, are trying to get into TV right now. So
yeah, I know Quentin Tarantino said recently that he was making a limited series. Like
limited series. Yeah, exactly. Because again, there's more freedom, more time, and we love to play with character. It's hard when you have, Scare Package 2 is a different example because it's just so balls to the wall, like all the time. Yeah. So you have like little glimpses of moments and what's there. But like other features, like, like the Pale Door and other stuff that we're doing, you really try to massage it in there the best you can, but you're like, you got to get out of this thing in 90 minutes, and here you can have 10 hours. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh my God, it's just an entirely different thing, but it's great. It's just a wonderful place to be.
Yeah. I do want to mention about Scare Package 2. I like that it is very fun. What I like about horror is in general is there's so many different kinds, because sometimes I like to watch something really dark or something completely bloody, or maybe something that may even make me feel bad. But sometimes you just want to watch something fun, depending on what mood you're in. And this is just a fun movie. You're not going to feel bad watching it. It's just a good time.
I mean, our first feature, Camera Obscura, is that feel bad movie,
right?
So we needed, and we saw it a lot with a lot of people that played festivals. And I was like, I need a palate cleanser from this because it's so depressing. Mm-hmm. And it ends in a very, very depressing way. So, but I like those movies too, but I will say there's kind of, there's been this, again, talk about the derivative nature syndromes that happens. And this isn't necessarily horror. This is just, if something's successful in Hollywood, they want to recreate it, and do this. And that just becomes this like failed paradigm. But there is I think with what A24 had done, there's a lot of people trying to make like A24 style horror, and it gets a little self-serving. I think it can get a little too serious, and we're
very long.
Yeah, we're just, and we have a couple movies that are in that A24 space and that I would love to work with them on. But as a whole, I think one of the mottos that we have as a company, and I wrote actually a thing on Letterboxd about it as like a guest person on there, which is horror with heart. And I think that's just something that we're trying to find. It doesn't have to be comedy or whatever. It needs to have something that makes you feel something, you know? And I think, and that's just important to me to kind of find that through line and to have something that, you know, maybe you don't necessarily want to throw up, you know, when you're done. Unless you're watching Scare Package 2 and seeing people throw up makes you throw up, then you're definitely going to throw up because surprise, there's
it's like, very fun to acid puke though.
Yeah, I think it's highbrow acid puke in every way, you know? Yeah.
Did you do research to see what the effects are? Someone who is allergic to bee stings, if they get stung by bees, is this accurate?
So no, you know what really it was from was I remember the movie back in the day with Danny Glover and Martin Short called Pure Luck.
I should know the movie. Yeah.
And he gets stung he's allergic to bees, and he's on a plane and he gets stung by bees and he balloons up. And it made me laugh so hard. It was like the funniest scene for me as a kid. And that's originally, I wanted her to become this like massive version. Or like Big Trouble in Little China, the guy who's like face.
Right.
That's what we were going to try.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the original comp. That's what we were trying. But as the Scare Package franchise goes, like I have these like huge ideas. I'm like, oh, never mind. We can't really afford the time or whatever to kind of do that. There's certain gags that I'm like, we're going to make sure, like the Dream Warriors TV thing. I was like, we're going to make sure we do that.
Very well done. Yeah.
Which was really hard to do. But yeah, no. So I just kind of was like, this is fun to me and what's there. Now we did research because the whole B section of this, if you will, completely came from just one line from me. And it was a day when I was writing like funny Jigsaw type dialogue, which was just fun. And I was just like going through, I was like watching the movies and like just kind of parodying stuff and come up with fun things. And then the one that kind of came to me, because again, I get frustrated when people were like, oh, it's just a B movie or elevated horror or whatever, that kind of stuff. And I was playing with those ideas. And then all of a sudden this line was, you called horror a B movie. Well, the real horror is the 10,000 bees I just put inside of you. And I'm like, it was this stupid, silly Jigsaw-esque version of this. And then I texted it to the gang and I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. And they're like, how are we going to put bees inside of it? I'm like, I don't know, but this makes me laugh and I don't know how to do it. And that kind of means you probably have to do it then, you know? So then once we kind of realized, okay, we can do Wicker Man thing. We originally had a big Candyman thing and what we're going to do and stuff too. Cause you know, thinking about bees and horror and like, how do you incorporate?
That's 90s movie too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a little bit of, there's a minor homage to that. But within that, it was like, okay, now how do they survive this trap? You know? And we're like, what are we going to do? Like, you know, and we're just researching all these different things. And then all of a sudden I read a line that was cinnamon, you know, you can use cinnamon to kill bees. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And I remember working in the corporate world and I did, you know, in corporate, I hated it so much. And I feel bad for everybody that has to still be stuck in that. And I remember there was like some, you know, corporate event or something, and they were like, if you can, you know, do the cinnamon challenge, and you'd get like some perk or something. And it's probably a perk that they should have given you anyway, but you know, they're just greedy, you know, people. And so I remember doing the cinnamon challenge, and it was just like horrible, like just horrible. And I was like, this is awful. Like, what is up with this? And then, so I knew very acutely what it actually felt like. And it truly felt like I was dying. Like it was horrible. And I was like, this is the dumbest saw trap ever. The cinnamon challenge is the way to get out of it. And credit to Graham. Actually, I see a text from Graham right now as I'm saying that. Credit to Graham Skipper, who plays Dwight, because he was the one who was going to be, when I did the framing, I was like, look, I need you at the front of the frame. And you're going to be the like big cloud of this. And none of them actually did cinnamon, but they were doing cocoa powder, which still kind of, the texture still can kind of mess you up a little bit. If you watch, you can see Kelly Maroney, she like can't do it. And she turns and just dumps, like it does nothing. So if anybody notices, you can see him like, it's fine. But Graham has to do the whole thing. And then he kind of improvised that line of like, we made a huge mistake. I think I said the line, it's like, we made a huge mistake. That was there, but he's like, we should have chosen the bees. And he's like, oh, as he's screaming. One of my favorite lines of the movie, one of my favorite deliveries of the movie. And that's just Graham Skipper being Graham Skipper. Is just like so funny and so jovial. But yeah, I mean, yeah, just stupid. You know, you have an idea. It's ridiculous. You don't know how you're going to do it. And that's what excites me. To like, okay, now let's do it. To figure that shit out. Yeah.
I gotta ask about the puppet because I'm a big fan of the puppet in the movie, and I'm happy that you have it and it's there behind you. Yeah. Who created the puppet?
So that was Tate Steinseck who created it. Tate, some people would know from oh godness, what is that show?
Well, didn't he do he did one of the Puppet Master movies, didn't he?
He did. Well, that's why I had him create this, because he did the little
I had him on the show for that.
Yeah, but he was on that the makeup show, the reality makeup show. Face Off. Yeah. So I think he like won Face Off, or was the finals Face Off or something. And actually, so were David Greathouse, Becky Ingram, other people that I work with. They're also and Eric Zapata. So I work with a lot of people who are on that show. But yeah, Tate, the timing didn't work for him to do some more stuff with this, but I needed to get this done early because it was going to take a while. And again, you know, he had created the puppets from Little Strike. And I was like, well, then there's, you know, he's already a pal. And it was amazing, you know, and he had the little clothes made and all this. It's fully animatronic. And I wanted, it's got repeat actions that it does, but I also wanted the tricycle that was with it, because I wanted to do, you know, that's meant to be kind of a little bit of a twofer. Like there's that wonderful scene again in Dreamwares where the tricycle comes out and it's got the blood behind it and then it melts. And I was like, ooh, that's so, just sitting in a mental ward and seeing a tricycle roll out is so scary to me, you know, especially as a kid. And so I was like, okay, we got to start with that. And then the puppet like lost his tricycle and has to come in and like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, and that's me, I'm voicing the puppet. And so it was just, it was fun. The puppet became a bigger part of it because we kept having so much fun. You know, that was a situation too, where Sam, Byron Brown, who plays Sam, we had him in the TV. So he's like blue suit below, you know, practical arms, kind of like cheating angles. And then he's really pushing his head through this like thing that we built that's all practical. And it's so hot. We're putting every fan on him. His makeup's like melting off. And we couldn't, scheduling wise, we couldn't figure out the timing to do that and do everything we need to do in the amount of days we had. So we basically we did like a split shift, and I moved most of the crew into the A shift, and I would direct all day with the main cast. Then they would be in another room getting him all, because it took like hours to get him ready through all of that. Then I went in there, and then I would step in each eye line of the actors as Sam's in the, you know, his head's up there in the TV, and I'm just, you know, so he's riffing back and forth to me. And then the actors, so they never were in the room at the same time. Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening was at one point that we put the puppet down there as kind of like an eye line, and I'm just like, I have to give Byron's literally the funniest person I've ever met in my entire life. And he's an improv comic. He does all the skit stuff in Austin. That's how I first found out about him. And he's just so funny. So I was like, I need to, and because I didn't have any time constraints, because this was a set thing, it was just me for sleep, and I didn't care about that. I'm going to show up and direct the next day. So I was like, look, let's just keep riffing and going. So I'm just like saying lines back to Sam, and Sam saying lines back to the puppet. We're just arguing back and forth, you know. And I mean, we're going to put bloopers on the Blu-ray, because there's so many things that we had to cut that are it just takes way too long. That's there, but it was so fun to do. And yeah, and then we couldn't really, the puppet was kind of expensive to get made. And it's another one of those, again, this movie's different, you know, it's the lowest budget movie that I have on our entire slate. But I remember talking with Ashley, my line producer and producing partner, and she's like, we can't afford the puppet. And I'm like, well, I'm paying for the puppet then. Like, that's fine. So then I get to keep it.
Right. I was gonna say that's a benefit too. You get to keep it.
Yeah, it's great. Well, and now if we're lucky enough to make a third one, I'm gonna bring the puppet back. Yeah. I even have him say it. There's a part, he's like, see y'all in the next one, you know. I'm like, yeah, let's just call our shot. Let's do a little Back to the Future 3 kind of thing, you know.
Yeah. The closing track in the movie is very fun too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really proud of the needle drop that we got. We got two big songs to me, really big. And again, if it matters to me, then I hope some other people it'll connect with. But we got Thunder in Your Heart, which is that's the montage song for beer pong and everything. And then it also, there's a version of that plays at the end when they're driving away. And but that song is from the movie Rad. And so I'm like, I needed to find a Rad Chad. I wanted a Rad theme song.
Right.
And I'm like, well, let's get more literal with this. And let's actually use the song from Rad, which is really great. And then Miami Connection, I saw that movie at Fantastic Fest when they brought it back in the American Genre Film Archive, which is based out of Austin. And I know some of those guys. When they kind of resurrected that film from Y.A. Kim, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was such a funny movie. And that song was amazing. I thought the song was so good. Friends Forever. And I was like, this is such a rad song. So cool. No pun intended. And I was like, okay, well, how could this work? And Alex Uding, he was the one who was pushing it first. I will give him credit for that. And I was like, oh yeah, I know the song. We got to do this. We got to find a way. But it also kind of works for me because I feel like at the beginning, if you look at Scare Package 1, Sam wants to be Rad Chad's friend. He wants to work there. He wants to be a part of it. And then when he's never allowed to kind of like have the career in horror that he wanted, then he kind of goes awry, right? And takes his fandom to the wrong level. And then he has this same level of indignation for the people that call horror a B movie or say elevated horror. There's no elevated comedy. Like, what the hell, So like stupid shit like that.
Elevated drama or something.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just a way to put down. It's people who don't like the genre and they just want to find a way to talk about it.
Yeah.
And compliment it. It's just so bullshit. So how his indignation, I could really parallel that to Jigsaw, which I thought was kind of fun because they both get so misunderstood in their motivations and all of that kind of stuff. But he, at his core, it started out, he just wanted to be friends. So this idea of like friends forever, and I thought was really fun to like have that play when they're back in the video store and diegetically, and I thought that was a really cool opportunity. And the only reason why we got that was because, like I mentioned, so I'm based out of Austin, Texas, and the American Genre Film Archive, which was owned at the time, I think by Draft House Films. And I knew those guys at Draft House Films pretty well. James Shapiro, who's now with XYZ, and some other folks. And I was like, hey, you guys have the rights to this movie, which means you have the rights to the song that's in here. And we verify, not all the time it means that, but in this scenario, it definitely did. So they were like, it does. We'll give it to you for free, but we just sold Draft House Films. I'm like, no, like literally while we were talking. So this other company, Giant Pictures, came in. And I kind of just gave a pretty big plea to them. Like, look, this is all this is. I can't afford to give you, tens of thousands of dollars for the song. I understand it was in a big video game and other people paid, but like, this is what we're doing. It's a DIY film, and they're a distributor. And I'm like, look, I make a lot of movies. Like, do me this favor and maybe I'll give you another movie or something, or, whatever, scratch my back, I scratch yours. And then we negotiated a very, very small fee. And we got that song, and I'm so grateful. So to get that and the John Farnham, Thunder in Your Heart is just so special for a movie of this size to get like that quality of needle drop that we can have on the soundtrack and stuff too, which we're working on the soundtrack and we're trying to do a vinyl and everything too. So be pretty rad, if I may. Yeah.
Yeah. So Scare Package 2 and the first one are both on Shudder. Do you think obviously you should watch them both. But if you've never seen the first one, do you think you could watch the second one and follow the movie?
Yeah. We tried to, we gave that little Friday the 13th Part 2 opening, that's like her on the bed. It's like, no, and just flashing back to the old movie. We try to give you some tidbits that are there. But I was surprised to learn how many people, especially in the festival circuit, more than half the people at most of these festivals had not seen the first one, and especially in a lot of these different countries, and because it wasn't even released in some of those countries, and they loved it. and they're like, oh yeah, I kind of get it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's nothing too complicated, that we're
Right.
doing. So it's definitely something you can come in and watch, but there are a lot of jokes that are layered. And again, it's kind of like anyone who's not even a horror fan could watch this movie and potentially still have some good fun with it because it's so silly. I mean, my girlfriend's not a diehard horror fan, and she's loved it as we moved along, and different friends in the same realm. But if you do know the horror movies, you're going to enjoy it that much more. I think it's the same thing with Scare Package 1. If you do know Scare Package 1, I think you're going to like it that much more because it really kind of gives you some character stuff so you understand, what's happening and like, so who is this guy in this wheelchair and what happened to him and why is he rolling out there and what is he doing?
Right.
And if you watch the first one, like he's getting pretty angry as it's happening. And there's even a line, we do like a little a mirror jump scare because you have to do mirror jump scares, again, tropes. We did like a mirror jump scare and he appears and he's like, we're like, where have you been? And he's like, I'm here. I'll always be here. So then I'm like, see, Sam told you he'd always be here. Sure. And that's what makes it really special without like spoiling anything too much, but it was fun. I had so much fun placing him in the background and scenes. And then like you go back, and if you go back and rewatch the movie, he's just sitting there, and you don't notice. And then you see that, and then you have to come back around and you're like, oh my God, there he is, just right there. And that was a lot of fun to kind of do. Cause again, he's saying like, you're not paying attention to me. I am here. Nobody's, and that's where he's growing frustrated. He wants he wants to be noticed. He wants to be seen. We all want to be seen, and there's a human, not to get too think about it, but there's a human element to that, right. Yep. But then he's also just a complete asshole and I love it.
Yeah. So when does the when does the Blu-ray come out?
No clue. Clue. Yeah. I mean, it's AMC is going through some change to say the least right now. So we're working on the materials, and I'm coming up with everything that we can pack in there and, what's Blu-ray specific versus DVD specific and fun art stuff and, what all the little Easter eggs that I can do. But yeah, I mean, my guess is it'll probably be March-ish. It's probably, that sounds about right, but who knows? They could release it in January for all I know. It's not up to me. Yeah. Well,
where can people follow Scare Package 2, Scare Package yourself, to see to get updates when things come out?
I am look, I am right now inundating every day the world with everything Scare Package because this is a small movie and we got to talk about it. So right. So you can follow, I mean, at Aaron B. Koontz, middle initial B, everywhere, Instagram and Twitter, especially. I'm most active, a little bit on Facebook, and I'm just talking movies the whole time. I'm talking about my friends' movies, and then at Scare Package on all three as well. And you can find all of that, all of that stuff, scarepackagemovie.com. But yeah, mainly my Twitter for the most part is where I'm pushing most stuff. I'm really glad that Twitter didn't completely go away because I fostered like some really great friendships and just some wonderful people that I've gotten to know, over the years. And especially like, the Mutant Fam and the Joe Bob Biggs kind of group and everything. It's been really, really special. And I can't wait for them to see this and, and what I've thrown in there. And so, yeah, I mean, we're out there and yeah, we can tell you all the inside info. We're going to do a watch party on Scare Package 2 next week after Christmas. We'll have a night. So we'll do like a tweet along thing. And I have a number of the cast and crew. They're going to help and talk about, we'll post all kinds of BTS stuff and fun things. And yeah. But I mean, if people like it, talk about it. It just means a lot. This is my 20th or so feature film that I've produced, my fourth that I'm like, writing, directing. And nothing has felt more special yet. And I hate to be like, they're all my babies, and they're like, is it a Sophie's Choice? It's not really. It's Scare Package and Scare Package 2 because they, again, reinvigorated my love for the genre and for filmmaking as a whole. And again, you can add up the budget of Scare Package 1 and Scare Package 2, and it's less than all the other movies that I'm making. But that's okay because it's not made for that. It's just, I actually think if it got too big budget, it actually would harm the film. I think there's a DIY aspect. That's why we also are hiring directors that I had some names, running nameless, but some big directors in the genre space that everybody would be very familiar with. I mean, not like Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele said he wanted to do a scare package segment. I'd be like, yes, Jordan, you are in.
No,
but
sorry.
but hey, I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah,
if he
yeah.
wants to, I'm down. I'm down to play. You know, he can try it
I'm
out.
sure
I
he's
mean,
listening. Yeah.
I'll probably have notes. You know, I'll probably have notes, but it's fine. No, I mean, yeah, I look up to him so much. But we had a number of, you know, name horror directors that were interested. And I was like, you know, I really want to focus on just up and coming DIY, like figure this shit out. They haven't really made a feature, you know, and we're trying to do this. And then hopefully this can be a stepping stone for them, because that's, again, it should be this kind of thing where we're like getting people, we're bringing up new people, we're introducing new people to it. There needs to be kind of and there's also just, you just have higher stakes, you know, like you're like, I got to make this one work, versus like, oh yeah, I'll do that thing. And it's like, they're doing us a favor versus the other way around.
Right.
And I think it goes further. So that's important to me. But anyway, yeah. So you can follow us anywhere. And wonderful directors: Anthony Cousins, Rachel Wiggins, Alex Barretto, you know, and Jed Shepard. They're all also on all the socials and very active and wonderful humans. And it was a joy to work with them and see what they do. And I learned a lot from them in the process, for sure.
This has been really fun. I'd love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, would love to. Yeah, we have a lot of movies coming up too. So
yeah. Do you want to mention any other? I know we're here to talk about Scare Package too, but anything you want to mention that you're on the coming out soon,
I mean, we've had, it wasn't really a horror film, but we had Old Man come out in October that Lucky McKee directed, Stephen Lang starred in.
Yeah, I have not seen it, but I was very interested in seeing it.
Yeah, I love the movie. It's more like a thriller, kind of like a mystery thriller. And then in November we had that I was the lead producer in that. And then November we produced Noah Segan's directorial debut, which was Blood Relatives, which is on Shudder now. And that again spawned from Scare Package 1. I worked with Noah Segan there and we were able to make a feature. And then obviously we have Scare Package 2 that's out now. In January we will have Sorry About the Demon, which is Emily Higgins' feature, which again spawned from the first Scare Package. So it stars even John Michael, the Mike Myers character from Scare Package 1. He's the star of their new film, Sorry About the Demon. It's a little bit of a rom-com horror film. I say it's John Hughes meets James Wan, so which is fun. And then later in the year we have The Artifice Girl, which is a sci-fi film that won Best International Feature at Fantasia, that Franklin Rich wrote and directed. Has got Lance Henriksen in it. Really smart, heady sci-fi, serious, like, you know, has really interesting things to say. Got a Christmas horror movie called A Creature Restoring that Damien Levesque did, who made The Cleansing Hour. That's coming out next year. And then our big movie next year is Shelby Oaks, Chris Stuckman's Shelby Oaks. That I can't say too much about it right now, but it's really special and is going to be the biggest project on our slate. And can't wait for everybody to see what we've done there.
That's very interesting and very exciting. How did you become get into producing?
I became a director to protect my writing, and I became a producer to protect my directing. And it really stemmed out of my first feature, where I thought I needed this producer to get these things done. And then we got on set and let's just say it didn't go according to plan. And I was like, I can fuck up just as much as this guy, you know? So that became an opportunity, and we're like, I think we can do this. And then Scare Package was our try. That was our first thing we produced with other people. That wasn't just like what we're doing. And it worked, you know, clearly, and went well. And then we did The Pale Door. And then I was like, okay, now I know we can do this thing where we produce and I produce on the things I'm directing. And then Scare Package, you know, we got some taste of new directors. Now let's go and let's help, you know, other directors get things going. And, you know, so and I think people saw that we had made, especially Scare Package and The Pale Door, which were both, you know, The Pale Door was a movie that everybody said was impossible to get made, didn't think we had the money. You know, every time I pitched it, it was like, you don't have enough to make it. And maybe that was partially true. But I think had we not lost money in the middle of making it, we actually it would have come out even better. But that's neither here nor there. But people saw that, oh, no, you did make that. You actually pulled off that movie, and then it was a hit. It did really well. And, you know, so, and the film made money and everything, you know, so it was like, oh, wow, this is real. Like this Aaron guy who keeps telling me he's going to make all these movies is actually making the movies. And the next thing you know, when the pandemic hit, we were one of the first companies that were helping like literally write some of the plans to go back to work, so we worked with some of the unions, like we did some stuff that we got involved in, and that really kind of showed that we were able to safely do this during the pandemic. And then a lot of people hired us at that point. They're like, hey, I have a movie. And typically what would happen is they would come to us and say, we've got $2 million, here's the movie, it's supposed to be a $4 million movie, we don't know what to do. And I'm like, no, we can make this for $2 million completely. And let me show you how to do it. And here's how you put the dollars on the screen. And here's how you do this. And yeah, we started doing that. And then, look, the real secret is you get the money back to the people that invested, and they're going to continue to do this again and again. And so I think we've just been very fortunate in that realm, and have hit a niche where we're good at producing movies, and getting things done and getting things made. And now I've once you again, the more you make, the more relationships you have, and the more people see that it can be done and they trust you. The problem is so many people go out and make movies, they never finish their movie. Like, people don't really talk about that, like how often that actually happens. And this money gets lost and it becomes this like just cycle, and it just goes down the drain. So we've become a company that has been reliable. We are on time, we are under budget. We run safe sets, especially during COVID. We had one positive COVID test over 6 films. And that was because of a hotel person that broke our own bubble that we weren't aware of. We come up with like really crazy ideas. We made a movie at a water park when that was closed. We made a movie inside a hotel when we couldn't even leave hotels in Canada. And we took over a Holiday Inn that was a convention center, and then we built the sets inside the convention center. So you walked out of your room and you walked right on the set, and you came back in your room, and we had everything catered, and we literally never left that space for the entire movie. So things like that, we would, and they were willing to work with us because they needed business,
right? Yeah,
So we took advantage of. I hate to say it that way, but we did. We tried to take advantage of the situations that the pandemic was there, because I'm a big believer in, if they give you lemons, you got to make lemonade. You got to find a way to make it work.
A lot of creative stuff came out of, a bad period in time, not just like Zoom movies, but people did a lot of creative things. Movies, maybe there's only a couple people in the movie, just a lot of unique things.
Yeah. I mean, Old Man is like that. That was more of like a pandemic style film, and that it's 2 people in a cabin, what made sense. So that was, you try to make some, but then there's others that we did they're huge, and they're all over the place, and action oriented and all this stuff, and you find ways to kind of creatively do it. And again, I'm a big believer that these restrictions breed creativity. Mm-hmm. So I like being given parameters, and especially I love when someone says, I don't see how you could do it, and I'm like, okay, you don't see how I can put bees in something? Okay, fine. Right. You know what I mean? Like, we'll find a way to justify it, and make it work. So that's what excites me. And I've just been one of those kind of, not against authority, but just like this idea that someone is trying to tell me what I can't do just ignites me to do it that much more, and especially when it comes to creative endeavors, because I think everybody's so caught up in what we should or shouldn't be doing, or the jobs we should have, or the careers we should have, or whatever. And they want to, there's a lot of people that just go around and like, I want to do this. And they're like, why do you want to do that? And Kevin Smith had a really good speech about this. And he talked about just surround yourself with why not people, and instead of that person who's like, you're like, hey, I want to make a movie. They're like, why do you want to make a movie? Get that person out of there. Find the person who says like, I think I want to make a movie. They're like, yeah, why not? Yeah, go find why not people. Like, yeah, why not? And I think that becomes your special group. And because it costs nothing to encourage an artist, and why we get caught up in this, what we shouldn't do. Like, instead, encourage them, get them out there, push them to figure out what their creative, itch is, and scratch the hell out of it, So anyway, diatribe, but
no,
you get it.
Yeah. Real quick, do you have any advice for someone watching this who's never made something? What would you tell them to do? But then, they want to make something.
Look, I do think there's some advice that's going around the past like 10 years, and I think it's getting a little. It kind of bugs me. So back in the day, Spielberg and Kubrick and whatnot, it's like, you got to go make something. And I completely agree. It's like, you have to go make something. And I still agree with that mindset. But this idea that like everybody has a phone, like anybody can do anything. Yeah, but you do need to learn some craft. I think you do need to take some time to kind of understand the type of story you want to make. Writing is free, right? That's your time. That's free. So rewrite. Get it to people who are not your aunts, who are going to tell you it's wonderful. They're going to give you real feedback, and they're going to make it actually good. And then more specifically, write to your strengths and write to production value that you have. So as a producer, I'm kind of like in Super 8, where the kid's sitting there and the train goes by and he's like, production value, and they have to swing the camera around. That's me so much in everything. For Shelby Oaks, when I was working with Chris Stuckman, he's like, yeah, I mean, I know I did a series of videos at the Shawshank prison, and we can get in there. I'm like, let's write something in the Shawshank prison now. And so we wrote this huge set pieces in the Shawshank prison, and it adds the value to that film so much higher because we knew we had access to it. So find out what production value elements you have. It's like, I know this abandoned building, I can use this gym for free, I can use this coffee shop, my aunt's backyard has this. Like, rack your brain of all of the unique production value elements that you have, and then incorporate those into the best script that you can for the least amount of money possible, the least amount of characters and total locations, unless those locations are completely free. And then, try and, add in stylistic things. Sometimes like sound can be very expensive. So like pick your sound days, and then have like a couple of days where you're doing like montage style shots and things like that. So you don't have to pay for the sound designer for that day or the sound mixer for that day, and just kind of get a bunch of those elements and plan it, and get a really good first AD and a good, producer that knows how to plan it and put this piece of the puzzle together. And then make every single person, a part of that success. So if it's for a feature, make it a scene in a feature. And then if it costs $10,000 to make, then have that $10,000 be recoupable in the feature, right? So if your feature costs $300,000, say, nope, it's going to only cost $290,000. That $10,000 is there. And then all the people who put in that money and the time and the sweat and all that can then get rewarded for a short that you made. And then I think that becomes something that's really special because they're investing in your future, literally and figuratively. But yeah, it starts with the script. And that script should be around the strengths of things that you have. And then, yes, you don't have to rent the best camera, and you can take those adages and that advice of like, okay, now get your phone out there and just go do it, because it really can work. But this idea of like, yeah, just go do it right now. Like, I feel like
right. Just get up right now and go make with no plans of any kind. Yeah.
I mean, look, if you're 12, and you're like, Spielberg and the Fablemans, like, yeah, go do that shit. You know what I mean? Like,
get your train set out. Yeah.
Exactly. Sure. That's fine. And if you don't know those basic elements, then you need to learn those basic elements and start there. But if not, then, get this stuff figured out, and then also volunteer to work on people's shorts. Those are there. They need people all the time, or micro budget features. Be the person who says like, I make a killer lasagna. I'll show up to your set with a lasagna, and they're like, yeah, come. You're now craft services, and you now have a job on the shoot, and now you're watching how this whole thing is getting made. And so that experience is vital as well. But yeah, you put all that together and then make something shitty, then make something less shitty, then make something that's like, shit. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that thing was okay. And then once you're at okay, you're starting to find your voice. Then when you start to find your voice, then it's like, now you hone in and you nurture it until you get something that's actually good.
That's good advice. I agree. All right. Well, this has been a great time.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
No, I agree. Oh, no, I thought it was a great time too.
Yeah. No, awesome. I could talk movies all day. So no problem there.
I could too. I didn't want to keep you all night, but I thought it went very well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to play us out with some our music of the month. Dylan Mars Greenberg sending this track to close out the show. Thank him. And you can stick around if you like. You can take off. Doesn't matter. But I'm going to play the song. And thanks again for doing the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thanks everyone for watching too. As I'm just wasting time now as I get this ready. All right, here we go.
I'm standing in a pool of innovation, but your face keeps slipping away. all the best I can make arrangement. Captain of the sea ship, first mate of his heartstrings, sailor of the free press, something comes from nothing. Please, Mr. President, don't leave me a resident of a simple mortal mouse's dream on the screen.
All right. Well, thank you, Dylan Mars Greenberg, and thanks for sticking around for the song.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It's cool to see all the great people you've had on.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there's a lot of recent guests. So.
Yeah, a lot of pals too. It's great.
Yeah, I figured there some people we've mentioned, I think, during the interview.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate
thank you for doing it.
All right. Cheers.
All right, bye. I'm gonna wave awkwardly while I hit end.